once we get the property under contract in this particular situation, let's talk about the next steps on virtual wholesaling. Because once we have that property under contract, let's talk about wholesaling it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it's so important to structure your wholesale real estate contract favorably so that you have enough time to find your cash buyer, you have enough time to shop the deal around to your buyers, and you also have protections to preserve and protect your earnest money deposit if you're going to be putting that up, and ultimately just execute your wholesale strategy. So, let's talk about getting it under contract. So one of the most important things you're going to want to have in your wholesale contract is an inspection contingency. Mm-hmm. And so what this is essentially a time frame that is specified in the contract, which allows you as the buyer all the opportunity to inspect the physical property, and ultimately you want to be satisfied with the physical property before you remove your contingency. Now, this is a way that you can back out of your purchase agreement if you're unsatisfied with the physical condition of the property for any reason. So this is one of the strongest protections that wholesalers have in their contracts, because if you're not satisfied with the property for pretty much any reason, then you can terminate it and walk away, get your earnest money deposit refunded, and you're good to go. But not only is it for a physical inspection, this is also the opportunity for you to shop the deal to your cash buyers. And ultimately, your inspection is going to be completed by your cash buyers. So one of the questions that we get a lot from students, from people in our community is, do I need to do the inspection as a wholesaler, right? Especially when you're a virtual wholesaler. Do I need to go pay an inspector to go inspect this property during my inspection? So what you want to do is have your cash buyers go perform the inspection so that you don't actually have to go spend the money on an inspector and physically be present. So you want to coordinate your cash buyer to go do their walkthrough. It's either going to be the investor who's going to be buying the deal. It might be their project manager. It might be their contractor. So someone on their team is probably going to want to go lay eyes on the property at some point before they commit to the deal. So you're going to want to have this completed during your inspection period so that you can solidify a new buyer on your contract for your deal before you remove your inspection contingency. Because when you remove it, that means you're locked in. That means unless you have other contingencies in place, that your earnest money is now non-refundable and you're pretty much committed to the deal financially. So this is super important, guys, as you can imagine. A lot of times new wholesalers might wonder, hey, how can I get out of a contract? Mm-hmm. How can I back out of the deal if I can't find a buyer, right? An inspection contingency isn't there to use if you can't find a buyer, right? Yeah. So it needs to be because of the physical condition of the property. So upon your inspection, your cash buyer's inspection, they might say, hey, the repairs exceed what we initially thought about the property, right? Our rehab budget just blew up because of these things that we didn't know regarding the property. It's in much worse shape than it initially was believed to be in, and therefore, we're either going to need to renegotiate this price, we need to get some kind of credit to make up for these repairs, or we are going to have to terminate, right? So this is a very crucial contingency, because it'll allow you to restructure your wholesale so that you can actually have a profitable exit based on a renegotiated price. Of course, we try not to do this a lot, but sometimes that happens, right? Especially when we don't get the information up front, when there's not a lot of photos online, when the listing description is very limited, when there's no reports or just disclosures that have been shared with us. So this is a great opportunity to make sure that the deal is a good fit for everybody involved.
For sure. And with that inspection contingency, with the correct backout clause and knowing how to utilize it correctly, this is how we virtually wholesale real estate risk-free. We always put backout clauses on our contract, on our contracts in case things do come up and we can renegotiate. And just for some context on the industry, there's some people that are wholesaling real estate and their whole strategy is to tie up a property at a high price and then at the last minute then ask for that $100,000 reduction. And that's not how we roll. That's not how we do things. So if other people are doing that, that we really don't recommend that. That's what puts kind of a bad name to some wholesalers out there. And that's also what allows us to close more deals. So I recommend for anyone watching, do it this particular way where you're putting your best foot forward first and only renegotiate the price because you messed up. Only renegotiate the price because we put it under contract at too high of a price accidentally or something came up during the repairs that we were looking at, and then we adjust the price. And if you do that, you're not going to burn any bridges with real estate agents. These real estate agents are going to be wanting to work with you time and time again because they can trust you. And people work with who they like and trust. And if we have 100 real estate agents in our area, and you can call 100 real estate agents in 1 week, and they all like and trust you, who are they going to bring more deals to? Most likely you. Now, back to the contracts. If anyone wants to download examples of the contracts that we like to use, then you can just go in the description. We'll put those in there, and you can use those to virtually wholesale real estate. And these contracts as well that we're doing on the market, these are signed digitally. So no matter where you're at, right? Some people might be thinking, if they're stuck in the off-market world, I got to go meet with this seller at the dinner table and go sign a contract. I can't do that virtually, right? Well, with on the market, these contracts are sent through DocuSign, and agents are using software like Zip Forms. It's sent through email, right? It's e-sign, and that's what allows us to do this virtually. So you don't need to go meet in person to sign a contract, and the overwhelming majority of these contracts we sign, and 99% of them are virtual. It's through email. We're not in the same place. We may not be in the same state, same city. So that's normal in this business. This isn't like some crazy thing we're asking people to do. It's very normal to sign these 100% digitally, get these deals under contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to note that historically real estate has been a very low-tech industry, very low-tech business. And even with all the technology we have today, you really don't need all sorts of software and all these crazy platforms and all these bells and whistles. You really just need some of the basic things, and that's why we always advise our students to keep a pretty low overhead business. We see other people buying expensive software and doing all these crazy things to design their business in a way, but we just focus on results and doing things as lean as possible, right? We come from a very lean mentality, highest ROI possible. And what you really need, like Alex said, is you obviously need an email address. You can use Google Suite, which has, spreadsheets, which has Google Docs, you have your whole suite, and it's absolutely free. And then, of course, an e-signature software as well. DocuSign, Digital Ink, AuthentiSign are some of the popular ones. And so when you're working with real estate agents, they'll actually fill out contracts for you, and they'll be sending them to you. So it's very easy to actually have these done. But when you're filling out your own contracts, of course, it's very nice to have your own digital software. So there's plenty of those that you can tap into. And when it comes to closings and documents and things like that, all of that's done virtually as well. So it's you really don't need to have a huge tech stack to really be successful in this business.
Mm-hmm. And so with all this, we can put the property under contract digitally, virtually, wherever you're located at. Now, once we have it under contract, then we need to get the cash buyer there, get in front of the cash buyer. That we've already done in step one. We've already found these cash buyers. We know it's a great deal for them. We're not scrambling around like a chicken with their head cut off trying to find a cash buyer now at this particular point. We have it under contract. We're protecting ourselves with that inspection contingency. Now we need to work on getting this in front of our cash buyer and selling it to them. So let's talk about that so we can start working towards closing the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So where we kind of left off is that, hey, we've got the property under contract, right?
Yep.
We're virtually wholesaling it. So we've already overcome the objections of, hey, I need to go to the property before making an offer, and then the inspection as well. We've already talked about that. How can we move forward with our virtual wholesale deal during our actual physical inspection? That's getting our cash buyers there. So once we have a cash buyer who's ready to commit, who likes the deal, they've done their walkthrough, there's like, hey, Alex, I'm ready to take over this purchase agreement. what's next? Okay, so there's three main ways where we can actually close this virtual wholesale deal. And all of them can be done virtually, digitally, without requiring our physical presence. So the first of which is what we will recommend to 9 times out of 10, because it's the lowest cost, it's the easiest way to get it done, and it's the fastest way that you can really wholesale a deal, is the assignment of contract. So what this is an addendum to your original purchase and sale agreement, which effectively transfers your interest as the buyer on that contract to your cash buyer. And in that agreement, it will also state an assignment fee. So the cash buyer, who's considered the assignee, is agreeing to pay you, the assignor, a fee of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, really whatever you can negotiate, which is the beauty of wholesaling. You kind of set the wholesale fee, and it's up to negotiation. And it says that, hey, I'm transferring my rights to buy this property to a new buyer. They're going to be paying me a fee, and they're going to take over the contract as well as all the liability, all the responsibility and obligations, and they're going to be closing the deal, and we're essentially out of the picture. So the cash buyer steps in once you get this assignment contract executed, and this gets sent to the title company, the same place that you sent your purchase agreement, and now the cash buyer is going to fund the deal and move forward with the exact same terms as in your original purchase agreement. So again, this can be done through email, through digital signatures, and ultimately the title company is a third-party neutral company that is going to facilitate the execution and follow through of all of these contracts. So you're protected, your cash buyer's protected, the seller's protected, everybody's winning, and these contracts just memorialize your agreements, so there's no misunderstanding, right? If it's not in writing, it's not real. And so if you guys are looking for a great assignment contract, one that we've used just as recently as last week to close deals, it's tried and true in multiple states, go ahead and download the Wholesale Real Estate Contracts in the description. You can also go to realestateskills.com/contracts to download both our real estate purchase and sale agreement and assignment agreement that we've been using for years and have even recently updated for your benefit as a wholesaler. So that's the first method, is the assignment of contract to wholesale your virtual wholesale deal. Now, the second one is a double closing. So a double closing is really just as it's pronounced. There's two closings. So in order to have two closing, you're going to need two purchase and sale agreements. So let's just kind of rewind. We have our first purchase agreement, and instead of assigning that purchase agreement, we're actually going to be closing on that contract, okay? But we're going to be forming a second purchase and sale agreement between, let's say me as the wholesaler and the cash buyer is going to be the buyer on that contract. So again, me as the wholesaler, I am now the seller on that second contract, and the cash buyer is now the buyer. So again, the first contract, we refer to that as the AB contract, kind of in the wholesale industry, between the property owner and me as the wholesaler. The second contract is the BC contract, which is between me as the wholesaler and the cash buyer. So me as the seller and the cash buyer is the buyer. So you want to line them up strategically so that the close of escrow dates line up exactly. Your inspection periods pretty much line up exactly. You're going to want to have the second contract inspection period expire a little bit before the original contract. So just in case they don't perform or something goes on, then you just want to make sure they're locked in. And you also want to structure the deposits in a way that your cash buyer is funding their deposit and it's non-refundable, so that any money you put up on the first contract is protected and that you're getting reimbursed and potentially even making money on that as well if your cash buyer's deposit is more than the deposit you put up on the AB contract. So a little bit more intricate, a little bit more complicated because there are two closings. And so there are some other technical differences with the double closing. You're actually buying the property and then you're immediately reselling it to another party. So you're going to be on title as the owner for a few hours and immediately you're reselling it to another party. So it is different. There are ways to do it without any of your own money, right? A lot of people ask, can you virtually wholesale with no money? This is one way to do it, through the assignment and through the double closing. If you want to do the double closing without any money, you can simply use your buyer's funds, your end buyer's funds, to fund the first transaction. So we call this a pass-through closing, right? So you just need to find an investor-friendly title company, a wholesale-friendly title company, and vet them ahead of time to make sure that they can do this, because not every title company will do this. But it is an amazing way to virtually wholesale with no money, and you can double close the deal without having to put up any of your own money. You can also use transactional lending to fund the deal. You're going to be paying a few points, some fees involved, so it's going to chip into your profit. But if the deal is good enough, it's going to make sense. You're going to get resourceful and figure it out. Of course, if you have the cash laying around, then you can use that to fund it. So,
yeah. And real quick, as a beginner, that was a very thorough breakdown. You nailed it. I'm sure people are wondering, why would I double close versus signing the contract? Why double close if there's more fees and maybe some more paperwork?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. So there's a few reasons. I would say the number one reason is that you want to disguise your assignment fee, right? If you have a great deal, you found an amazing property that has a huge margin, and you can charge $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 as a wholesale fee, knowing that your end buyer is going to make double, triple that on the flip. So you just got a great deal. You want to eliminate the opportunity for them to try to renegotiate or beat you down on the fee that you're making when they see that assignment fee. So when you double close, you're not presenting them with an assignment contract that has your assignment fee right on there. You're actually presenting them with a purchase and sale agreement with one price that they're going to pay at closing, so that's what they're bringing to the table, and they don't know how much your original contract is. So it's one way to disguise your fee when you're going to be making a very large, substantial fee. The other reason is that, we've worked with hedge funds, and when there is a big fee, a lot of times, and even if there's not a huge fee, a lot of times these hedge funds, they want to know that there's a separation between the original contract, the original seller, and them as an entity buyer, as a large hedge fund buyer. So when you're wholesaling to hedge funds, sometimes they're going to want you to double close so that you're the one who's selling it to them and that they're not the ones buying it directly from the seller. So sometimes, people can look at the industry and say, hey, you're stealing equity. They call it equity stripping from the mom and pop seller who their entire retirement is in a house. And, there's just this misconception that, wholesalers are like these big hedge funds, these institutional landlords are stealing properties from people. So in order to protect the reputation, they actually require us to double close sometimes so that it's not them who's buying it from these mom and pop owners. There's a wholesaler in between. So that's another reason. And, besides that, sometimes it's just you might have a non-assignable contract. There might be some friction to assign the contract. If you're buying from a bank or like a non-traditional seller, sometimes they might be a little more firm as far as the assignment goes. So if there's anything like that, sometimes an agent or seller might say, hey, no wholesalers, no assignments, yada, yada. And if you can't really overcome those objections, then you can double close, or the third strategy we're going to talk about, you can certainly use that so that you're actually buying the property only to resell it shortly thereafter.
Awesome points. And so you can disguise your fee when working with hedge funds. They may want you to double close, create that separation. And then also, if you've never worked with a cash buyer before, and even if it's a $15,000 fee, but you don't know who the heck this cash buyer is. Like, our cash buyers they're happy paying $20,000, $30,000 fees. We have great relationships with our cash buyers, which is why we can assign them. They want to pay us this money, but a lot of people don't have those cash buyer relationships. And so if there's not that trust already developed with that cash buyer, double closing can just be that great way to ensure you're disguising the fee and you're just not going to get beat down, like you said. So great points.
Yeah, and I would say kind of like the lesser discussed one is especially as a new wholesaler, if you don't have a big track record, being on the HUDs, buying and reselling properties helps you build a track record so that when you're raising hard money, when you're raising private money, when you're getting into fix and flips, you now have a track record of being the principal who's buying and selling these properties. And so you can now present this so you can get better hard money loans, you can get better financing terms when you're fixing and flipping, and you're getting into bigger investments where you're actually buying and holding properties. So it's just another way that you can actually build a track record. Even though with assignments you can still be on the HUD, it's just it's sort of a different way where you're actually the buyer and seller on these contracts. So it's just another way maybe you want to build your track record as a newer wholesaler who's just getting started in virtual wholesaling. That might be a reason why you'd want to double close over assignments.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because here at Real Estate Skills, we do more than just wholesaling. We fix and flip. We've borrowed millions and millions of dollars for fix and flip deals from hard money lenders, private money lenders. We borrowed millions of dollars on rental properties that we buy and own. And so building up that track record is extremely important to get that funding so you can leverage other people's money and be able to buy these properties. And so if you're watching this today, that's the end goal here. Wholesaling is a great starting point. We still wholesale today, but we're also interested in buying and holding properties. So just want to throw that out there so anyone watching know we encourage you to use these funds you get from virtual wholesaling to then roll those profits into rental properties. This is, what we're focused on day in, day out all the time. So just wanted to put that in there. Now, lastly, what's this third way to close, Ryan? What's this third way to close? We need another way.
Yeah, so the third way, and this is a little more advanced, but this is what we call the entity assignment. So you can actually assign or you can sell your business entity, typically an LLC, to the end buyer for a fee instead of assigning the contract. So let's kind of break that down. So let's say, me as the wholesaler, I put a property under contract and I have that property under contract in my LLC. So instead of assigning the contract to a new buyer, I actually will sell my LLC to the new buyer. So on the contract, the buyer stays the same, but now the cash buyer, the end buyer, is now just purchasing my LLC. So we would use an LLC membership interest purchase agreement to then sell the LLC to the end buyer for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever your wholesale fee is. And so why would you want to do that, right? So there are instances, for example, right, REOs, foreclosures, bank deals, where you're using their purchase agreement. You're doing the deal on their terms in many times. And of course you're getting a great deal, but there's some hoops you have to jump through. There's some extraordinary rules that you have to abide by. And sometimes they don't allow assignments of contract. They just won't do it. So there are some exceptions to that. We've definitely assigned REOs. You usually have to do it a little bit earlier on in the transaction. We've absolutely done that many times. But if you're a little bit later in the transaction, it can get harder to do so. So one way to close a wholesale deal without assigning the contract or changing the buyer is simply just selling your entity to a new buyer. So there can be some complications with that. Some buyers might say, oh, well, what happens if your entity has a bunch of debt, right? What if you have a bunch of credit cards I don't know about? What if you have a business loan that is, hundreds of thousands of dollars that I'm now inheriting? So there's a few ways to circumvent that. You can sign an affidavit, which is a statement that's saying, hey, none of your concerns are valid. Like, I'm attesting that I do not have debt on this company. I don't have credit cards on this company. This is a clean entity. There's nothing in this entity other than this asset, which the asset is the contract. The second thing is that you can actually form a special purpose entity while you're under contract on this deal. So what that means is you can put the property under contract in your individual name or in your LLC. And then you can work with an attorney. We know several attorneys who do this, who specialize in this, but you can work with an attorney who will create what's called an SPE, a special purpose entity, that will be specifically designed for this type of wholesale deal, where you're now assigning your contract to your new entity, which is wholly owned by the same buyer. So it's basically me assigning it to myself in this new wholly owned entity. And that can be formed within 24, 48 hours. The attorney can do it for a few $100. And now it's a brand new entity. It's clean. There's a paper trail. Your end buyer is going to feel a lot more confident and comfortable with this entity that was formed 5 days ago, that obviously doesn't have much of a track record. And they can now take over this brand new, fresh, clean entity and pay you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for it. So again, there's no assignments of contract happening. It's just you're simply selling the membership interests of that brand new clean entity to the buyer, and they're going to be paying you whatever your wholesale fee is. So the other huge advantage to this is, there are some regulations in states like South Carolina, right? People are saying wholesaling's illegal in South Carolina. There's states like Illinois, so there's a few states where there are some restrictions around the marketing and advertising of contracts of properties, right? So in those situations, this is one way where you can actually avoid marketing and advertising a property or a contract. So this completely lands you in the clear of any restrictions around those types of rules. Because if you go ahead and lock this property, this contract up, and you go ahead and advertise that on Facebook or online, you can now say, hey, I'm selling an LLC. I have an LLC for sale for $20,000. And one of the assets of this LLC, here's a disclosure. The only asset of this LLC is this purchase agreement. And this purchase agreement is for a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot home in Greenville, South Carolina. And now you're not marketing and advertising the contract. You're doing so for the LLC. So there's other reasons why the entity assignment method is very important and is a great tool for any investor or any wholesaler who's looking to do deals. So that's why we wanted to mention it today as just a great tool in any wholesaler's tool belt.
Yeah, we wanted to go in depth and just include multiple strategies. And just to recap this particular section, I mean, overwhelming majority of deals that we do, we assign the contract. There's deals that we do that we double close. And then the strategy of entity assignment is the one we use the least, right? Just in those sticky situations that we need to do it. So for anyone watching, probably expect to assign most of the contracts, then double close, and for specific REOs, bank-owned properties, just one-off situations, you're going to want to use that entity assignment and understand that. So let's say we either assign or we double close. Ryan, let's talk about our favorite step, which is getting paid and collecting our virtual wholesale fee. How do we get that virtually? Do we have to go to that state and pick it up? Like, do we have to drive there? How's this work now?
Yeah, well, congratulations if you made it to this step. Everything has been lined up. You got a great deal on your contract. You found your buyer. You've properly assigned it to them, or you've lined up your purchase agreement or your LLC sale agreement. And now you're coordinating with the title company, the escrow company, or the attorney, depending on what state you're in, and ultimately facilitating the closing. You're supervising, you're coordinating, and then ultimately when that transaction closes, now you're either receiving your fee, your profit, whatever that might be, through a check directly from title. Could be a wire transfer, or you could go pick it up, right? You could go pick up your check in person, or they could mail it to you, right? So as a matter of fact, we've got this.
We usually get them wired, but
yeah, we usually get wires, but this one did get mailed to us. So this was a deal that we closed just a couple weeks ago, and it was mailed to us. So sometimes it's nice to have a little paper souvenir. You take your wholesale contracts, some pieces of paper, and that can be translated into these other valuable pieces of paper. So it can be either or. Wires, checks. At the end of the day, it's a nice clean profit.
Yeah, and that's the process right there. And what we do after this is we just repeat the process over and over and over again. It's what we do day in, day out. And then as we evolve as a virtual real estate investor, now at this particular point, you start building up a nest egg of capital. You build that track record like we're talking about. Now maybe you virtually fix and flip like we've done in a different state. And then you start building up more capital, and maybe you virtually buy and hold properties like we do in different states. So this virtual wholesaling is this starting ground for us to not only make an active income, but then gain the skill sets that we need to get a passive income, which is one of the coolest things about real estate, right? Being able to own real estate that can then bring us passive income on a monthly basis, start taking care of our liabilities, start taking over our expenses. And so just always want us to be focused there, because if we're only focused on wholesaling and not building wealth, then it won't be our goals. Like we won't be shooting for that. But virtual wholesaling, what we wanted to do today was really go over the 101. We really wanted to pull the curtain aside and say, what the heck is virtual wholesaling, and how, if you understand these principles, apply them to your local market or any state across the U.S., you can do this from the comfort of your home, working at a coffee shop, while on vacation, while taking care of your children. This is something that it doesn't matter if you're 80 years old or 18 years old. Anyone here can be a real estate investor. Anyone here can be a virtual wholesaler using these strategies that we cover today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I just look back a few years to the pandemic and everyone's staying at home, and we're closing deals, right? People are like freaking out, and you can't go anywhere. A lot of jobs are kind of like shut down, and real estate is one of those essential businesses, and it was just cool to be able to work off the laptop, use our cell phones, use our email, and really just using the MLS, using some of these websites to find deals, close deals, monetize them. And like you said, it's really not just about like the money. It's about the ability to reinvest back into these assets, right? Because virtual wholesaling is one strategy, but there's also fixing and flipping, and then buying and holding. So once you kind of crack the code of being able to remove yourself from a wholesale deal, then you can now see, hey, what about a fix and flip? What about a buy and hold? So it's pretty amazing when you can put the pieces together. You can get into these deals, right, without using any of your own money, deals that you've never even set foot on, in cities that we haven't even visited. And so it's pretty much like an amazing opportunity, because you realize that the whole country is your buy box at the end of the day. So of course you need to have the right exit strategy in place. You need to get your ducks in a row, but it's pretty exciting just knowing that everything is really accessible through our laptops and through technology today. So it's really just an exciting place to be, and we've seen people even with full-time jobs just run with the system, and they're able to close deals in other markets. I know we had student Mustafa who was in Miami, who's closing deals in Jacksonville. We've had students closing deals in Texas who also lived in Georgia. And we've closed a handful of deals even just this past month in Denver, Colorado, where I haven't even been there. I don't know about you, but
just the airport.
Just the airport for layovers. So there's ways to scale. There's ways to do it. We've really talked about from the perspective of like an individual who's looking to crack this code. But as you scale, right, as you continue to build your team, there's ways to do it to where you're truly that entrepreneur. You're truly that business owner. Like in one of our companies, we've hired acquisitions managers who can actually run the whole process for us. So they're finding the leads, they're negotiating, they're handling the cash buyer relationships, that we hand off to them as well. So there's ways to really delegate a lot of the day-to-day and elevate yourself to really being that owner status and creating somewhat of a passive wholesaling business too. So so there's levels to real estate, right? There's levels to getting in this business. So in order to get there, you really want to master the fundamentals. And so really what we pride ourselves in teaching here is really the fundamentals, the timeless essentials of knowing how to find great deals, knowing how to analyze great deals, and then pursue them and have a profitable exit. Yeah, as I look back on my wholesaling career, virtual wholesaling has just been a huge part of how I've been able to scale, doing deals in over 12 states. I think it's closer to 15 now, whether for wholesaling, fixing and flipping houses, without using any of my own money, to buying and holding properties, and even self-managing rentals that I still haven't seen, I haven't been to those markets, even, completely managing and producing passive income from a long distance. It's pretty reality shattering, when I look back and just see how, working this process and really being a student of real estate has completely changed my life and has really opened up so many opportunities to grow professionally, grown my net worth, but more importantly has just given me the freedom and flexibility, to run my own businesses and to live the life that I really want to build for myself and for my family. And so it's really not just about real estate. It's not just about money and business. It's just about being able to live lives that we are proud of and that we can grow into and really challenge ourselves, to and continue to aspire to be someone that we want to and living our best potential. So I think, for me as someone who came from the corporate world and really just felt trapped in a, kind of 9 to 9 career, not even 9 to 5, 12-hour days. I always had an ambition and I always wanted to do something and I always wanted to apply myself and I always knew I was going to do something great, but I was always looking for something to do. And so when I found virtual wholesaling, when I found long distance real estate investing, when I realized that you can do this in other markets, right? We live in a relatively very expensive market, probably one of the most expensive markets in the country in San Diego, Southern California. The whole country is an opportunity to get in, more comfortable price points, different market fundamentals. And so I think just going all in on real estate allowed me to lean into something that helps me achieve my full potential, allows me to exercise that ambition and really scratch that entrepreneurial itch to continue to grow and challenge myself and really live my best life. And I've just been so fortunate to be your business partner, Alex, and just be inspired by you every day. We share this office together and just be able to help other people, replicate what we've been doing for the past 10 plus years. And, one of the things that we like to say here at Real Estate Skills is leaving no one behind in wealth creation, right? Because, it's a big mission and we just see what real estate can do for us and for our students. And so we were just passionate about getting the word out there. And we know that other people can do it too, with the right model, with the right plan, and with the right process, really, and with the right team and education. So that's what we're here to help you guys with. And hopefully you got a lot of value out of today's video. And hope you guys stick around to watch more of our content. We're here to help you guys succeed in real estate, no matter where you want to take your businesses, because we know you have potential. We know you can do it too.
Awesome. Nailed it. All right, we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next video.